So the session is going to be how to win an argument using critical thinking to challenge some ideas. So a quick outline, we're going to talk about some definitions, what are arguments and what is winning, and also about your intentions, the goals of the discussions, and kind of like what should you do to prepare, what should you do during, and what should you do after. And we'll talk about some resources. A quick, who am I? My name is Jordana Fung. I am from Suriname, South America, where we speak Dutch natively, and I grew up speaking both Dutch and English. I'm a volunteer member of the Drupal Community Working Group, who is chartered to foster community health within the Drupal community. And I am part of the conflict resolution team within that, where we uphold the Drupal Code of Conduct and do mediation for community members. I am passionate about learning, collaborating, communication, and as well community health. So let's start off with some agreements. We have the DevRel Code of Conduct, which is amazing, which we will be upholding here. It's a safe space, and which means we'll be respectful and considerate to one another. But another thing I would like to have you keep in mind is having a learner's mind. So sometimes we'll know things, but when we learn and know things, it's always good to keep practicing. So gentle reminders of these things are always good. So a use it or lose it mindset. So sometimes we shouldn't jump to conclusions too quickly. Some notes on this. 15 minutes is not a lot of time to do all of the things I packed in there. The resources are linked in these slides that you can get from that link down below. I'm happy to get more resources. And like I said, I'll try to go through everything, but if we run out of time, the slides are pretty verbose and I'm happy to discuss things afterward. So let's talk about some definitions. So the use of the word arguments in discussions, we generally kind of use them interchangeably, but actually what arguments are is whenever you're explaining why you believe something or why someone else should believe you're something, you're giving arguments. And these arguments are usually, they're supposed to be built upon resources to make your case. And you use those arguments in discussions and dialogues with other parties. So what is the purpose of a discussion? So in the times of Plato and Socrates, people would philosophize about right and wrong, how to think and learn. And this in turn influenced how the Republic was led and how laws were created. So they use these discussions and these dialogues to exchange ideas to come to a greater understanding of the truth. So it's more about exploring other points of views so you are more informed and can make more informed decisions. And it just also aids in critical thinking. So what's the definition of winning? So winning is when these discussions have taken place effectively, when you have a better understanding of the truth through the exchange of ideas. Note that this session is not called How to Always Be Right. So generally here, winning means how we all win. So how do you win an argument? Just give them the facts, right? No. Unfortunately, just giving facts don't win arguments. We are not rational beings. We think and reason with our emotions, our history, and our experiences, our belief system. Our brains do a lot of unconscious processing for us once we've learned something, and it kind of all becomes a little bit automatic. So Daniel Kahneman calls this thinking fast and thinking slow. So thinking fast is usually what happens, your gut reactions, what happens automatically from memory. It's almost involuntary. You have almost no control of that. And it's that thinking, your fast thinking does most of the mental work. And the slow part is more thoughtful, it's more deliberate, it's more planning, and you can control that part more. The unfortunate thing is we often think we're thinking slow while we're thinking fast, which often leads to us being wrong and we're not knowing we're wrong. So we can be very blind to very obvious things because our belief system starts to get so ingrained, and the way our minds think is so automatic that we jump to those conclusions. And moreover, when it has to do with beliefs, we kind of get even worse with that. So if I were to show you a visual illusion of connected dots and I tell you this is not how it works and I show you how it works, you'll understand and you'll believe it. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen with your belief systems, as we talked about with the facts. It's much harder to break those connections and to kind of figure out where things gone wrong. So before you start with a discussion, you need to think about your intentions and the goals of the discussion. Because you can't, if you enter with the wrong motives, it might lead to bad decisions in the end. So are you trying to actually understand? Are you trying to get more informed? Are you trying to make better decisions? Or are you wanting to lecture somebody? Or are you wanting to discuss? Are you open to learning? The thing is, if we think we know everything, you can't, it'll be really hard to learn something new, right? And if you think you can't be wrong, you think you know everything. So what is your intention? Is it the intention to change someone's mind? How can you change something you don't understand yet, right? So here's the thing. Most people come into a conversation with their minds already made up. Do the best you can so that's not you. Are you listening, or are you just waiting for your turn to talk, right? If there's one thing I can have you have as a takeaway, it's this. It's what Dr. Stephen Covey says is seek first to understand, then be understood. So now we've talked a little bit about listening and about why we want to have this discussion. Now we come up with, should you really have this discussion? So is it, the slides are a little bit old, is it necessary, right? Is this your fight? Is this worth it? Is this something you should be doing? So is it set up for success, right? Are people willing to have like open discussions? Are you the right person to talk about this? Is this a topic you're going to be triggered by, or by the person or the topic you're going to be talking about? So it's always good to kind of consider all of these things before you even have that conversation. That's the right slide. Sorry. So how do we start with having a good discussion? So there's some things you can do in prep before you start this conversation, before you start any kind of a hard conversation, basically. And that's to set rules. For example, in certain situations where you'll have a code of conduct, it's a little bit easier. Some of the base rules are already set. But it's always good to prepare yourself, to consider the environment. Are you in a calm or stressful environment? Is it loud? Is there alcohol involved? You should try to create an environment where everybody feels safe and feels heard. Creating safe spaces is one of the most important things to have a good conversation. So also understanding what's working against us, right? So language barriers, priorities, all of those kind of things. And one of the good things to do as well is don't assume malice. So when you sometimes it's very easy to come to the conclusion that somebody is basically kind of like out to get us, but generally it's just usually a misunderstanding. I'm gonna start flying through. I'm looking at the time. So how do we have better communications? Good communication is the purpose. When you're listening, so you have two parts of communication: listening and speaking. When you're listening, the purpose is to get the most information you can from the people you're speaking with, to understand as much as possible. You don't know what you don't know, so try to use this time to understand as much as possible from this person. Use an interview style of type of questioning to make sure you understand correctly. And when you're speaking, remember you're speaking about the things you want to explain and bring forward. You're not attacking. You're also trying to be understood. So speak clearly, but also be patient, be understanding, and think about whether what you're saying needs to be said. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And is it honest? And I kind of want to have this little thing about honesty. Being honest does not mean you have to be abrasive or unkind. You can tell the truth with kindness and compassion. And then this comes to, again, to all of these things: practice, empathy, patience, empathy, compassion. They're all skills. Communication, they're skills, and skills can be taught, learned, and refined. So we can have good intentions, but we can still do harm. So I want to kind of hammer in this fact that intention does not equal impact, and intention does not erase impact. Something small for you can be something very big and important for somebody else. So what is understood by the other person may not have to be what you meant. So we should always be careful and mindful of that. So playing fair in a conversation, you should genuinely try to understand what is happening, what the situation is, and the other people involved. Don't be defensive. Don't use logical fallacies. Be patient and be kind to yourself as well as to the other folks. Sometimes we can get impatient with ourselves as well. Generally, during discussions, we are going to challenge each other's perspectives and assumptions as well as our own. So it's very important to go with that mindset of remembering what you're there for. And you're challenging assumptions. You're not challenging each other. So what happens when things get escalated? We have de-escalation tools that you could use, but also it's better to start de-escalating before it's come to a boiling point. So make sure you're not being antagonistic or that you're angry or fighting. Ask questions to better understand the situation and the person instead of assuming things, validating their feelings. And try to get to a common ground. So focusing on the issue at hand and not on the person is also a good way of calming. But then we should also know when to end the discussion. So you need to know what your triggers are. You need to know when you're triggered. And this can take a lot of practice and time. You need to try to be respectful. Remember that these are people that nobody wants to burn bridges. So even though you think you're going to go into a calm conversation, always be prepared to be unprepared. Always have an exit strategy. Always have a sentence you can say. Let's put a pin in this and come back to it. Have a sentence. Have an exit strategy, because by the time you need to end that conversation, you might be going into that fight or flight mode where it's harder to end the conversation respectfully. So always try to have that in your back pocket. And what if that happens? You could ask for help. You could ask for help before. A mediator or facilitator is always super helpful. Find out resources and take advice from others. And remember, again, these are skills, so it takes constant practice. So the quick TLDR is, the goal of arguing is to get it right, not to be right. Winning means solving the problem, getting to be better informed, and achieving your goal and learning. And remember, be kind, be patient, be understanding. We're going to get it wrong. We're going to be wrong. But it's how we handle and process that is, and what we do next, what's most important. And here are links of some resources of that you can follow along on. Thank you.